All right, so today we're diving into a moment that honestly changed everything. We're talking about the very first revelation to the Prophet Muhammad. And it's a story that unfolds in a way you might not expect. It doesn't start with a big announcement. It starts in total solitude. It's not born from certainty, but from this deep, gnawing doubt. And it all leads to this call to action that would literally reshape the world. So let's get into it. So you have to ask yourself, how does a world-changing message actually begin, right? I mean, when you've got something that's going to touch billions of people, reshape entire civilizations, where's the starting point? Is it some huge speech in front of a massive audience? Well, not this one. It starts in just about the most private, isolated place you can imagine. No audience, no crowds. Just one man, totally alone, in quiet thought. And he's about to have an encounter that will change not just his life, but the entire course of human history. Forever. Okay, so to really get a grip on the revelation itself, we first have to understand the man before he received the message. See, this wasn't just some random, out-of-the-blue event. Nope. It was the result of years and years of deep spiritual preparation. Long before he was a prophet, Muhammad was, at his core, a seeker. He just couldn't shake this feeling of being deeply troubled by the world around him in Mecca. The idol worship, the moral decline. This restlessness inside him literally drove him out of the city, up into the peace and quiet of the hills. And he had one particular spot he always went back to, the cave of Hira. And listen, don't picture some grand temple or cathedral. This was a tiny space, super small. We're talking just 4 yards long. This is where he'd go to meditate, sometimes for long stretches at a time, especially in Ramadan, just thinking, contemplating the universe. And he'd even share what little food he had with any traveler who happened to pass by. And this wasn't just a weekend getaway, This intense, deeply personal spiritual search went on for about 3 years. 3 years! It was this absolutely critical time of pulling away from the noise of the world, kind of purifying his soul for what was just around the corner. And then it happened. That solitude was shattered by a divine encounter. But here's the twist. What came next wasn't some instant clarity or a clear path forward. No. What came next was this profound, crushing silence. A silence that would test him to his absolute core. So right there, in the cave of Hira, the angel Gabriel appeared to him for the very first time. And he delivers the first words of what would become the Quran. This was the moment his prophethood officially began. And you can only imagine what that was like. Absolutely earth-shattering, probably terrifying, and just completely awe-inspiring all at once. But then, nothing. After that huge, life-altering event, the communication just stopped. Total silence. Days turned into weeks and still nothing. Can you just imagine the confusion? The doubt that must have crept in? Did I just imagine all of that? Am I being abandoned? This time is actually known as the interruption of revelation. And the psychological toll was just immense. I mean, listen to this quote from Al-Bukhari, a key traditional source. It really shows you the depth of his despair. He became so sad, so filled with anguish, that he actually thought about ending his own life by throwing himself from a mountaintop. It was that bad. So you have this brutal cycle, right? His deep sadness and doubt would drive him to the edge, to the top of a mountain. And just then, Gabriel would appear and say, "O Muhammad, you are indeed Allah's messenger and truth." And for a moment, his heart would calm down. The turmoil would settle. But then the silence would come back and the doubt would start all over again. You see, this wasn't just about suffering. It was about forging his spirit, creating a kind of certainty that was so strong it could survive anything that was thrown at him later. Well, that period of waiting and intense longing finally came to an end. And when the revelation did return, man, it came back with this undeniable power and a mission that was crystal clear. The time for quiet, private contemplation, that was over. The prophet himself tells the story of how that silence was broken. He's just walking along and he hears a voice from the sky. He looks up, and it's him. It's the same angel from the cave, Gabriel. But this time he's sitting on this huge chair, right there between the earth and the sky. The sight was so overwhelming, so powerful, that he just ran home terrified and told his wife, "Cover me, cover me." And it was right then, while he's wrapped up in his cloak, that the revelation comes flooding back. And these words, they weren't some quiet whisper. They were a direct, powerful command. "O you enveloped in garments, arise and warn." That was it.
The private journey was over. The public mission had just begun.
Okay, so we've talked about what happened and when it happened. But what about how it happened? How was this divine message actually communicated? Because, it wasn't just a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. It actually took a bunch of different forms over the next 20 plus years.
The word for it in Arabic is wahi, and that word covers the whole process of God's message getting to the prophet. And it's really important to get this. This was not like just reading a book or getting an email. It was this deeply profound and often physically exhausting experience. Yeah, the sources tell us it happened in a few different ways, each with its own level of intensity. So sometimes it would start as true dreams or visions, things that were as clear as daylight when he woke up. Other times, the angel would kind of cast the words straight into his heart, without him ever seeing a thing. Then there were times Gabriel would show up looking like a regular person and just talk to him. He even saw the angel in his true, incredible form a couple of times. But the toughest one, the most difficult form of all, was when it came like the ringing of a bell. This was so physically intense that he would be drenched in sweat, even on a freezing cold day. Just incredible. So what was this message all about? What was the core of what he was now told he had to go out and deliver? Let's break down the main ideas that were right there in those first powerful verses. The instructions were super direct and really deep. First, warn people about what's coming, about the consequences of their actions. Second, magnify the Lord, Allah, and only Allah. Third, purify yourself inside and out. Fourth, get rid of the idols, shun all that stuff completely. And finally, be patient for the sake of your Lord, because this path is not going to be easy. These were pretty much the building blocks of the whole thing. And when you put them all together, these instructions really became the bedrock for the entire call to Islam. I mean, think about it. It was a pretty radical invitation for that time and place. A, testify that there's only one God. B, believe in a hereafter, a day of resurrection. C, work on sanctifying your own soul through good deeds. D, entrust your entire life to God. And E, believe in Muhammad's message and his leadership. The sheer clarity of it all was, in a way, strategic. It just sliced right through all the complicated pagan stuff of the day, offering a simple, powerful, and totally life-changing path. You know, that very first line, "Oh, you enveloped in garments," it's so personal. It's a direct call to him, telling him to leave his comfort zone, to leave the quiet life behind. It was basically a command to trade his own personal peace for a public mission that was guaranteed to be full of hardship and struggle. Yeah, the time for sleep was definitely over. And that's really where we're left, with this one big thought. To go from being a solitary man, seeking truth alone in a cave, to suddenly being a messenger for all of humanity, what does it really take? I mean, what does it take inside of a person, spiritually, mentally, to stand up and carry a weight that heavy, a weight that's going to change the world?